All right, good morning. Today I thought I'd talk about some of the primary influences in my development of my hand reading. When I started in 1983 with the course with Fran, the first thing I went to do was I went to a place called Hay-on-Wye in the United Kingdom, which is on the border of Wales, as Hay-on-Wye is the world's biggest second-hand bookshop. And I went looking for handreading books, and the two that I found were The Laws of Scientific Handreading by W.G. Benham and Confessions, Memoirs of a Modern Seer by Cheiro. And I went and got these books. The Benham book was published in 1903. The version of the Cheiro book is a bit of an old one, it's a Sagar reproduction, but also from that time. So Cheiro and Benham were two of the most important or well-known hand readers in the late 19th century. Cheiro was based in London. Benham was based in New York. And the Laws of Scientific Handreading is widely revered as being the most important and extensive book on palmistry ever written. And Cheiro is widely held to be the most important and significant hand reader that's ever existed. He was certainly a very famous character, a very flamboyant character. His real name was actually William John Warner. He was an Irishman. He pretended to be a count. He called himself Count Louis Hamon, and he had an incredible life, hobnobbing with the glitterati in turn of the century London, and knew all sorts of famous people and had all sorts of interesting stories about his life and what he did. He eventually ended up becoming a Hollywood writer, and that was a really big part of what he did. So it was kind of like he was basically a very interesting storyteller, and it's a very engaging book, the book on his life story, The Confessions of a Modern Seer. And he talks in that book a lot about all the famous people whose hands he's read: Mata Hari, Sarah Bernhardt, the actress, Mark Twain, the writer, various generals and politicians that he encountered in high society of London of the day. And he had consulting rooms which looked like a sort of Indian boudoir somewhere in the centre of London. I think it was in Baker Street, and successfully entertained hundreds of clients from all over the world, and particularly well-known high class, upper class people in Victorian and Edwardian society. And the book's a thoroughly riveting read, although you can't believe a word of it because he's prone to exaggeration and hyperbole. But it remains a really good book because it's full of very interesting handprints that he collected at that time. And so I do recommend Cheiro's books if you want to get a good collection of old handprints. I don't recommend it from an educational point of view. Cheiro claimed to be a seer, and the truth or otherwise of that claim is kind of filters down into his work, because the work is incoherent. You can't actually follow it. It's not actually a system. He comes up with these all strange ideas. He has a sort of system 7 for timing, and he does a lot of prediction from the hand. But he actually used numerology and astrology in particular for doing that. And it's actually impossible to learn the system that to become a hand reader in the way that he was, because he doesn't have a system you can actually learn. He also, like most Victorian palmists, follow the kind of mount system, looking at the areas of the palm, like, and how raised or deficient they are. And of course, that's a defunct way of looking at the hand, and I'll do a separate video on that shortly. But William Benham, on the other hand, was a much more kind of down-to-earth, systematic sort of person, sort of like a quintuple Virgo or something. He was very precise in the Laws of Scientific Handreading. It's like a 650-page tome looking at the detail of the hand in extraordinary depth and detail. The first half of the book is on the shape and the morphogamy of the hand. The second half of the book is on the lines. And he claims to be writing a tome that kind of re-establishes handreading palmistry as an actual science. Unfortunately, he doesn't actually manage to succeed in doing that, and there's very little scientific method in his book whatsoever. Again, he's got some very interesting handprints. He was able to collect the handprints of prisoners from the state penitentiary in New York, so he's got some very interesting and unusual handprints in there. But the whole, and some of his observations, sorry, on the form of the hand, structure of the hand, like thumbs and fingers, are really good. And some of those ideas have stood the test of time. But the entire section on the lines of the hand, it doesn't include one handprint. So he's got all these amazing examples of different kind of things that can allegedly happen in the lines of the line formations of the hand, and then goes on in great detail to explain what they all mean, but doesn't give any illustrations of them. So he just does little hand drawings. And to be honest, when I see people doing hand drawings of handprints, I just think, well, you're just making that up. Particularly with the more unusual hand features, which when you start, you don't know if they exist or they don't exist, but after some years you go, I've never seen one like that, and you come to doubt the very existence of those lines in their entirety. So there's a big suspicion on my part that he made up a lot of his stuff. And I've had occasion to review some of the stuff in that book, which I thought was quite good. I've had a chance to review that recently, and particularly on the thumb, the fingers, like knotty and smooth fingers, and the fingertips. And I've actually don't think any of that's really useful anymore. I think there are people who've written books on that, chapters on the thumb, which are more erudite and more accurate. I think the fingertip shapes are almost completely irrelevant. And knotty and smooth joints, again, that's of little value rather than a huge value, and even if it's actually accurate. So, and and the thing with the tip shapes is important for Benham because he used the Ponteny system of handshake classification, 7 types, and he used the fingertips as part of that way of classifying things. But most of all, he worked with mounts. His second book, published in 1946, was called How to Choose Vocations from the Hand, and that was all about the mounts and how to choose personality and things from the mounts of the hand, which unfortunately is a complete load of rubbish. You can't do anything from the mounts of the hand whatsoever. So it's actually historically interesting, but actually technically useless books. But they are good exposition of, probably the 2 best exposition of what hand reading was like in the turn of the century. So they have a historical value, but not actually any utility value. So like a lot of these things, when you do these things on your own, these were my first 2 books that I studied. You don't know where to go, you don't know what to look for, and you think you're dealing with who are claimed to be some of the best authors. They're not, and it's definitely time. It's definitely time to upgrade those books, particularly the Laws of Scientific Handreading, and that's something I'm intending to do over the course of the next couple of years. So watch this space.